There is one of those things we all experience. But the strange part is how differently people handle it. Some take it as a teacher, a sharp but necessary lesson, and they walk away wiser. Others pretend it never happened. They sweep it under the rug, polish up their excuses, and keep smiling as nothing went wrong. And that's where the real danger lies. The worst part of failing is not the failure itself. It's the pretending. Because when you pretend you didn't fail, you rob yourself of the one thing failure was designed to give you. The lesson. I've seen it over and over. Someone makes a mistake, takes a loss, falls short of their goal, and instead of pausing ask what went wrong, they bury it, they blame someone else, or they change the subject, or they convince themselves it wasn't really a failure at all. But here's the truth: if you don't face it, you can't fix it, and if you can't fix it, you're going to repeat it. Years ago, I watched a man in business lose out on a major opportunity. He made a poor decision, overlooked some details, and the deal slipped through his fingers. Now, if he had owned it, studied it, learned from it, he might have set himself up for success the next time. But instead, he pretended it wasn't his fault. He said the timing was wrong. The other party wasn't serious. The market wasn't ready in his mind. It was anything but his mistake. And because of that, he went on to repeat the same errors again and again. His life became a cycle of missed chances. Not because he was incapable, but because he refused to admit where he failed. See, failure itself doesn't ruin you. Denial does. Failure is supposed to stop you, get your attention, and make you think. It's supposed to wake you up to the reality that something needs to change. But when you cover it up, when you pretend it didn't happen, you trade honesty for image. You might save face for the moment, but you lose the future. Because the moment you start pretending, you cut yourself off from growth. I learned this lesson early in my career. There were times I made mistakes, sometimes small, sometimes costly. But the turning point was when Mr. Chef told me, don't smooth it over, pretend. Admit it, study it. Fix it. That little piece of advice changed the way I looked at every setback. From then on, because every time I was honest about failure, I walked away with clarity. And that clarity made me stronger, sharper, better prepared for the next opportunity. So here's the starting point. Failure itself is not final. It's not fatal. It's not even the real problem. The real problem is pretending you didn't fail. That's what keeps people stuck, repeating the same mistakes year after year. The only way forward is honesty. The courage to admit failure and then learn why it happened. That's where growth begins. That's where progress begins. And that's where success eventually comes from. Pride has a strange way of trapping people. Instead of admitting a mistake, pride whispers to cover it up, to not let anyone see, and for a while, that might even feel safer. But the truth is, pride never lets you grow. Pride says to protect your image. Growth says to protect your future. And if you choose the image, you lose the future. I've seen people hold on to pride so tightly that they never learn the very lesson that would have freed them. They keep defending themselves, excusing themselves, convincing themselves that nothing went wrong. But every time you refuse to admit a mistake, you chain yourself to it. You guarantee a repeat performance. And all because of pride. Now fear is another reason. fear of what others will think, fear of being judged, fear of being laughed or dismissed. But here's the reality: the people who succeed the most are the ones who failed the most and admitted it. The world respects honesty. The world respects a person who admits they failed, but makes it clear they're not done. Fear convinces you that people will think less of you if you admit a mistake, but more often than not, they think more of you because honesty takes courage, and courage is always respected. Then image is what happens when you live for appearances, when you care more about looking successful than actually becoming successful. People polish up their stories, erase their mistakes, pretend they've always been on the right track, and yet deep down they know they're living a lie. And the worst part, the lie always shows up eventually. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But time has a way of exposing pretense. So pride, fear, and image. These are the traps. They make people hide failure instead of face it. And while they're busy protecting their reputation, their growth is standing still. I learned early that if you want to keep moving forward, you can't spend your life pretending you've never stumbled. The stumbling is part of the story. It's part of the education. And the moment you try to hide it, you lose the very thing that could have made you wiser. That's why I say, the worst part of failing isn't the failure itself. It's the pretending, because when you pretend, you rob yourself of the only real gift failure has, to give the chance to become better. When you hide failure, you don't actually erase it. You just delay it, and the longer you delay it, the heavier it becomes. Pretending doesn't solve the problem. It compounds it. I've watched people repeat the same setback 5, 10, 15 times, all because they couldn't bring themselves to admit it. The first time they wanted to protect their pride. So they patched up the story they wanted to protect their image, so they hid the evidence. But here's the reality: every time you cover it up, you guarantee you'll face it again. Only this time the price is bigger. It's like a leaky roof. The first drip doesn't ruin the house, but ignore it, pretend it isn't. And one day, you'll be standing in a living room with a collapsed ceiling. That's what denial does to your future. What could have been solved with a small repair turns into a disaster. And here's the bitter truth: life doesn't let you skip the lesson. If you don't learn it the first time, it'll bring it back around over and over until you face it. That's why pretending is so costly. You don't just pay for the failure once. You keep paying for it month after month, year after year, in lost progress, missed opportunities, and wasted time. One man I knew used to say he was just unlucky. But when I looked closer, it wasn't luck at all. He just kept running the same play, hoping for a different result. He'd start a project, cut corners, refuse to admit mistakes, and watch it collapse over and over. And you know what? He wasn't unlucky. He was dishonest with himself. That's the cycle people fall into. When they pretend they didn't fail, they don't learn, they don't change. And because they don't change, nothing changes. You build a future that way. Not in denial, not uncover ups all. You build is repetition. Same failures, just wearing different clothes. The cost of pretending is that you stay stuck where you are, and the longer you stay stuck, the harder it is to climb out. That's why the moment of honesty, The moment you admit the failure is not weakness. It's freedom. It's the only way to break the loop and start writing a different story. There's something almost liberating about just saying I failed. Not covering it up, not spinning the story. Not pointing fingers, just owning it. Because the moment you admit the weight of the PRT is gone. And that weight is often heavier than the failure itself. I've seen people carry that burden for years. They spend so much energy trying to protect an image that they have nothing left to build a new reality. Denial keeps you stuck in the same place, replaying the same excuses. But admission, it's like turning on the lights. Suddenly, you can see the mess for what it is. And more importantly, you can see a way out. When I first started learning this lesson, it felt uncomfortable. Nobody likes saying it was their fault, that they blew it, but that tiny bit of accountability does something extraordinary. It gives you ownership again. And once you own it, you can change it. Without that, you're just a victim of circumstances, trapped in a story you didn't want, but refused to rewrite. The freedom is in the admission. That's when failure stops being a wall and starts being raw material. That's when mistakes become teachers instead of enemies. Because failure itself doesn't keep you from moving forward. PRTNDNG does. Failure acknowledged BCOMES, a turning point. Failure denied BCOMES, a permanent destination. Failure is a harsh teacher, but it leaves behind lessons that success rarely does. When things don't work out, you feel the sting, you feel the disappointment. But inside that experience is information you can't buy anywhere else. If you're willing to face it honestly, failure hands you clues, INSIGHTS and CORRECTIONS, that set you up for the next attempt. See, failure always leaves a footprint. It tells you something about your preparation, your habits, your choices. But here's the key. You've got to stop long enough to study it. Too many people fail, pretend it didn't happen, and rush back into the same mistake. That's not learning, that's repeating. But if you pause and ask, what part of it was you where you took the wrong turn? What habit was missing suddenly? Failure BC as a guide instead of just a wound. I've met people who have failed in business, failed in RELATIONSHIPS, failed in health. And they'll tell you those failures, as painful as they were, became the turning point. Why? Because they finally saw what needed to change. They saw patterns that couldn't continue. They discovered blind spots that success had hidden from them. That's what failure does. It shines a bright light on the parts of your life you've been neglecting. Here's what you gotta do. Don't just get through the day. Get from the day. That stuck with me. Every failure has something to give you. It might be discipline, it might be humility, it might be wisdom, it might be patience. But you have to collect it. If you don't, the pain was wasted. And wasted pain is one of life's greatest tragedies. So remember, the worst part of failing is not the embarrassment. It's not the loss, it's not even the disappointment. The worst part is missing the lesson. Because if you miss the lesson, you're destined to repeat the experience. But if you take the lesson, you build strength for the next round. And eventually, those lessons stack up into wisdom. And wisdom is what carries you further than talent, luck, or good intents ever could. You know, failure has a strange way of stripping away the surface and showing you what's really inside. When things go wrong, when your plans fall apart, when the deal you counted on doesn't come through, You're left standing face to face with yourself. And in those moments, character is either revealed or developed. See, it's easy to act disciplined when everything is working. It's easy to be kind when everybody agrees with you. It's easy to look confident when the numbers are up. But failure tests what's real. It asks, who are you when the applause stops? Who are you when the effort falls? Flat, who are you when you're not winning? That's where honesty becomes a tool for growth. Because if you pretend you didn't fail, you rob yourself of the very thing that could strengthen you. The truth is, failure has a way of producing qualities that success alone never can. It gives you humility, because you realize you don't know it all. It builds resilience, because you learn how to stand up. After being knocked down, it shapes patience, because you find out that growth takes longer than you wanted. And it develops integrity, because you learn that the only person you can't lie to forever is yourself. Here's what I learned from Mr. Schof. Don't just measure success by the money or the recognition. Measure it by the kind of person you're becoming in the process, because if failure shapes your character, then it wasn't wasted. If it made you more disciplined, more humble, more prepared, then it's already paying you back, even before the results come. Think of it this way: failure is a furnace. It burns away the excuses. It burns away the pride. It burns away the shortcuts. And if you'll let it, what comes out on the other side is something tougher, cleaner and stronger. You can pretend you didn't fail, and you'll keep repeating the same mistakes. Or you can face it head on, take the heat, and come out with a character that no one can take from you. And here's what I've discovered. The marketplace eventually rewards character. People want to work with those they can trust. Leaders want to promote people they know will stand strong under pressure. Customers want to buy from someone WHOSE word means something. And none of that is developed by pretending you never miss. It's developed by facing your misses and becoming better because of them. So if you failed, don't just think about the money lost, the opportunity missed, or the time wasted. Ask instead, who did I become in the process? What did this failure shape in me that success alone never could? If you can answer that honestly, then you've already turned failure into an asset. Failure, when handled honestly, becomes one of the greatest teachers life will ever send your way. But here's the catch. You only get the lesson if you're willing to face it. If you cover it up, deny it, or pretend it didn't happen, you shut the door on the very wisdom that could have changed everything for you. See, life is an asking you to never fall down. Life is asking when you fall, will you get up differently? Will you rise with more clarity, more strength, more determination than before? That's the real question. Because failure itself isn't final. It's neutral, what you do with it. That's what decides. Whether it becomes a stumbling block or a stepping stone. I learned long ago that the greatest difference between those who eventually succeed and those who stay stuck talent, it isn't luck. It's how they deal with failure. Some people let it mark the end. They convince themselves they're not cut out for it and stop trying. Others take that same failure, examine it, extract the lesson, and use it as fuel for the next attempt. The same event, but two entirely different futures. So when failure comes, and it will, don't waste it, don't bury it. Write it down, study it. Ask yourself what really happened. Was IT timing? Was IT preparation? Was IT execution? Was IT mindset? Break it apart like a student in the classroom. Because inside every failure is a seed of instruction that can guide your next steps. And here's the truth. If you're honest with yourself about failure, you'll never waste it. You'll walk away with insight, with clarity, with strength you didn't have before. And those are the very things that position you for your future success. But if you pretend IT didn't happen, you guarantee you'll meet the same failure again, just in a different form. And that's why I say, the worst part of failing is pretending you didn't. Because failure, OWNED, honestly, can shape your destiny, but failure, DNIED, that will chain you to the same cycle again and again.